It wouldn't be a Vulgrin video if I didn't mention the possibility of Classic Plus. For years now, ever since Classic was released in 2019, I've dreamed of a day when we would get the announcement of additional original content for Vanilla, and always I thought that day would never come. But maybe, just maybe, this time it's different.
We are leaving the door open to the possibility of completely new experiences and the prospects of exploring previously unfinished or unused locales for future raid and dungeon content. We're starting at level 60. I know, I'm excited too. Overall, we've been playing this a ton internally. We've been having so much fun with it. It's everything we love about Classic, plus so much more.
So that was then, and here we are now, a month later, and we are having additional original content for Classic World of Warcraft, for Vanilla era WoW. I still can't believe it. We are getting Classic Plus. Or are we? That's what we're going to discuss. We have so much to cover here, guys, so much to discuss, but that's what this video is. This is going to be a deep dive talking about all of the revelations, all of the announcements that came in relation to Season of Discovery for WoW Classic at BlizzCon 2023. I am joined by my friend Tim the Swede, a very experienced hunter, playing since Vanilla, and I'm going to start by asking you, Tim, straight up, is Season of Discovery Classic Plus?
More or less, it is.
Right, okay, I put you on the spot.
That's what I would say.
Good. I put you on the spot there. We'll get into it a bit more and you can tell me your reasoning. So, obviously, the big reveals at BlizzCon, for WoW this is obviously, were Season of Discovery for WoW Classic, Cataclysm Classic, and the World Soul Saga, as they're calling it, the trilogy of expansions planned for retail WoW. We're going to primarily discuss Season of Discovery in this video because, you know, this channel essentially is a Classic channel. But before we go into any detail, I just really want to know, what was your reaction to these announcements at the time?
Honestly, I was a bit shocked because I went in knowing that this weekend was BlizzCon, and with the debate going on about whether or not there should be a Classic Plus or there should be Classic Cataclysm, like, retail has nothing to do with this because you always know that there's going to be a retail announcement every time there's BlizzCon. But regarding just WoW Classic in general, I did not think that they would go for giving the community both things.
Yeah, I know, right?
So I'm very curious and very positive about these news.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I was going to ask you, what your expectations were versus reality. So I'm assuming from what you're saying that you expected the announcement of the next retail expansion and Cataclysm Classic. Would that be right?
Without going into like too deep into retail, I was surprised by that announcement as well because it's something different than we're used to.
Yeah.
Also, in regards to like in the way that Blizzard has produced in the past, when I learned about there being 3 retail expansions announced at the same time, I thought, like, okay, how much work are they putting into Classic?
Right.
I knew there was going to be a lot of announcements, but my expectations was actually, they were not high. Like, I thought we were going to get a Classic Cataclysm, and they were going to do like something for hardcore, which they did as well. Hardcore players, there you go. I was positively surprised. Like,
you weren't expecting some sort of Classic Plus type thing. You didn't think we were going to get
No, not really.
And to be fair, we talked about this in advance, hadn't we? And I was of the same view. I said it a lot in my videos leading up to BlizzCon that whilst Classic Plus was the desired outcome because it's new and why the hell not, I did not expect it. I thought they would just pick the safe option. But in the end, like you say, they gave us everything. And as much hate as Blizzard might deservedly get from time to time, I cannot hate them for giving everyone something. Right, the people who wanted, Cataclysm Classic, they got that. The people that wanted big changes for retail, they're getting a trilogy of expansions that are going to work consequentially so that it leads on, the stories and systems lead on from each other, taking a note from Final Fantasy by the sounds of things. And Classic Vanilla, my game of choice, our game that we play primarily, is getting original new content, and that is Season of Discovery. So, I asked you at the start if it was Classic Plus, and you said more or less. Are you optimistic for this season that we're getting, or are you a bit concerned?
I will say this: I'm very curious, and I am optimistic. But carefully so, because this is a completely new thing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I view this as a new game, essentially. I know it's not really a new game because, you know, like, they're building this from classic WoW, vanilla era WoW.
Yeah.
But they are changing things up. Like, I mean, when we go into Season of Discovery, there's still going to be, like, a lot of things. Like, most things I think we're going to recognize.
Sure.
What I'm curious about is how it's going to pan out. Like, how much of this content is actually going to feel new to us. And I have the hopes that the feeling that I will get from playing it is that I'm going to be discovering things all the time, which is why I think it's a great thing that they're not putting this on alpha, beta testing, or even on the PTR.
Yeah, definitely.
Before it releases. And release at the end of the month, by the way. That was a shocker.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, is there anything that you're particularly surprised about? But I think that for both of us, that release date in less than a month after the announcement is crazy. Like, I would never have expected that. With what they're announcing, I would have thought, right, okay, so maybe the new year, maybe spring, but less than a month away? Wow. I can only think that they're doing that because they want to give this a shot before Classic Cataclysm and try and have a bit of a rolling broadside of releases, you know what I mean? So that they're not overlapping too much. They can have, like, this Season of Discovery thing, and then hopefully people will be playing that, and then they'll go straight into Classic Cataclysm, and then there might be the next expansion for retail. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying not to step on their own toes, if that makes sense. But let's break it down, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to Season of Discovery. So, specific features then. I want to start with the level bracket, because for me, this is where you've got to begin, because it sets up everything that they're doing. The fact that you are having a level cap of 25 makes this far different than it would have been if everything that they were doing is at 60. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to say, like right out, that I think this is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Especially for people like me, who grew up playing WoW, but now as an adult, I don't have the time that I necessarily had before when I was younger to play every day. And since I play multiple versions of World of Warcraft, that gives me even less time to spend on each game separately. But by staggering the way to level 60 like this, it always means that like what I think they even put that in the announcement, that it's never too late to start. Or something like that. Yeah. So, like, I don't have to worry if I don't reach level 25 in the first, like, couple of days of it being released. I don't really have to worry about that, because the way to 25, if we go by that it's supposedly just as fast as it is on Classic Era, then it's not going to be, like, too much time spending, leveling. I think we're going to be seeing some sort of end game, right? Like, pretty quickly, which is awesome.
It is. It means that people can play, and it doesn't matter whether you're a really experienced player or whether you're playing it for the first time. You haven't got this monumental task of getting to level 60 before you feel like you're properly playing the game. And I think that the good thing about it is that when there was the beta for Original Classic back in 2019, and you had people like Asmongold and others exploring the world where they had level caps, it created a sense of exploration and a desire for players to create their own content that hadn't really existed before. People were thinking, oh, right, well, that person's done X, dungeon, that person's done Y dungeon, they're in the best in slot gear for that period. And that's a completely different way of thinking about WoW to what we normally think of, where it's like, oh, you've got to be at level 60, and then it's like, oh, have you got your tier 1, your tier 2, have you cleared Naxxramas? It changed the nature of the game up in a really interesting way, and I think by having these different brackets, you'll get slightly different takes on the game. At the level 25 bracket, as we'll talk about in a bit, Ashenvale is going to be a super important zone, because obviously it's a zone of contest between Horde and Alliance. Both factions are quite close to it, but add to that the fact that the raid's going to be in Ashenvale, which is why they've put this PvP zone-wide event that we'll discuss in Ashenvale, no doubt. That's going to be the place where everything is. That's where people are going to be. But as soon as they up that bracket to the next level, which is level 40, I believe, Ashenvale is going to become, like, completely non-existent, and it's going to be somewhere else, maybe Stranglethorn Vale, or possibly Badlands. Oh, God forbid the Badlands. Tannerus, exactly.
Tannerus, please.
Yeah, I would be, no, honestly, we joke, but I would not be surprised if Zul'Farrak is one of the next level up raids, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
The point is that having these level brackets will create different areas of focus at different points. So I agree with you, it's a good idea. So here's the next question then. How long do you think these different phases will last? Obviously, we're going to be at level 25 initially. It's only going to take most players, a day, a couple of days, a week at most to hit level 25. How long do you think that cap will go on for?
Like, I would guess, like, maybe just, like, a couple of months, maybe, like, 2? I don't know.
6 weeks, I think, is probably the safe bet to go on, but also probably as much as you can do at that point.
Yeah.
But,
there's also the thing, like, where this is called season of discovery, and not something different like World of Warcraft, whatever.
Classic Plus.
Because exactly, Classic Plus, but I don't know, maybe they don't like the name or something.
Well, he did hint about it, though. Did you catch that?
Yeah. I saw that. But like, I'm thinking about like the what they did with the Season of Mastery, which I think most people can agree with that was not a smash hit.
They didn't do enough, did they? Really?
No, and that's also one of my reasonings for thinking that this was not going to be announced, because they don't want to take risks or whatever.
Sure.
But I think maybe, like you're saying, like 6 weeks for each phase, if you can call them that.
And I think it's good because by having these shorter windows, like much shorter than a normal patch would be, if you think like Fall of the Lich King came out, like a month ago?
Something like that.
Realistically, we're going to be in this patch for into the new year, right? It's going to be the new year. Then there's going to be, I don't know, what was the name of the patch for the Halion raid? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember.
But there'll be that patch presumably at the start of the new year, or a little bit after it, like early spring or something. Can't be that far away. And then it'll be Kada by like summer or something like that. The point is that for a normal patch in World of Warcraft, whether we're talking about retail or classic, we can expect each patch to last around 3-4 months easy. Sometimes much longer than that. Whereas with this, we might be looking at like less than 2 months, right? And I think that's good because it creates a sense of like tension, and this is the zeitgeist, this is the passion of the moment. It sounds like I'm talking about a romance thing, but people are going to be thinking, oh right, I was there, level 25 doing the Blackfathom Deeps. I saw that before we moved on to the next thing. And part of that is, to me, that's part of the magic of vanilla WoW, is that feeling of, unique things occurred and then they were gone. It was like a flash in the pan. You were there for the Gates of Anchorage, or you weren't. You were there for the Hakar Plague, or you weren't, And I kind of like how there's going to be that feeling of players experiencing things as a community and then it moving on to the next bit.
I think staggering it like this, like the way that if you need to catch up, it's going to be fine. I think also because of the staggering, like if you are somebody who ends up maybe just reaching level 25 towards the end of the first level cap phase, and you may only get to do the Blackfathom Deeps raid like once or twice.
Yeah.
There's just going to be like a little while, and then people are going to be questing again and running dungeons. So I don't think there's going to be this feeling of falling behind in the same sense as if they would just make fresh realms where the level cap is 60 and you can't put in the time to reach level 60 in the minimum amount of time, so that you fall behind from your friends who have a lot more time than you, and etc., etc.
Yeah, and I feel like it will make tried and tested old elements of vanilla, like, in this case BFD, but then things like Scarlet Crusade, feel like episodes in like a TV show or an anime or whatever, You're going to be like, oh, we got to level 25 and we did this, but we were all waiting for the moment where Scarlet Crusade was the next big thing. And then from there it might be Diet Mall or whatever, Which makes me talk a little bit about these low-level raids, the level-up raids as they call them. What do you think about the concept of having raids at lower levels than level 60? And do you think that there'll be any weird bits where it interacts with gameplay? So things like, for example, BFD, level 25 10-man raid, but you know as well as I do there will be players trying to push to complete level 30 or even higher dungeons. Will that give better gear? How will it interact, in your opinion, from the outside?
Yeah, I guess we'll see
True.
about that. I think the just by the raids alone, I think is a great idea. We didn't have 10-man raids in Vanilla WoW. What you had was you had CG, which was a 20-man raid, which was also put into the game sort of as a catch-up thing. I think having raids at lower level brackets is a really, really good idea because it also prepares people for the end game raids in a different way than what we're used to. Like I'm just thinking about because I hope they tune it this way that the gear from the raid should be the best available gear at the current time, because I think a lot of people are going to love the feeling that they're essentially they've hit level 25 and they've been clearing Blackfathom Deeps, and now they're essentially a fucking level 25 twink.
Yeah, that's it. And then they're going to go into the leveling bit to the next bracket, and they're going to feel powerful, and that's a good feeling. That's what it should be like. So the level caps then, so that we've got it, are level 25, then phase 2 will be level 40, then phase 3 will be level 50, and then phase 4 will be 60. So that's quite an interesting jump, isn't it? When I first heard about level 25, I was thinking, okay, they're going to go with level 35 for the next jump, but they've gone all the way up to 40. Now there's quite a big jump there, isn't there? Not just necessarily in levels themselves, but we both know that when you get to level 40, anyone who's played vanilla knows level 40 is a big moment. It's an important moment in your game. It's not just things like mounts and stuff like that in traditional vanilla WoW, but also things like, you go from mail to plate as a warrior or a paladin. You gain access to core abilities that you didn't have access to that can sometimes go on to define your class when you hit level 40. It's big. What do you think, if you had to say right now, if level 40 is going to be the next cap, what do you think the next level up raid will be?
If you ask what I hope for, I definitely hope for Sulfurak.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of my favorite dungeons from the original game. I think it has both the layout and the potential, boss-wise, to be a raid. Just the event at the pyramid alone is something that I think that you're used to seeing in a raid in a way.
And the gong and stuff like that, the outside of the dungeon stuff you have to do. But I think we both know what it's going to be. It's going to be Scarlet Monastery. I
think so too.
Anyone who so Scarlet Monastery, obviously this massive 4-wing dungeon series, very unique. I think that the only real close similarities to Scarlet Monastery are probably things like Blackrock, in terms of having everything compact into one area that's as iconic as that is. But level 40 is traditionally the level that most people do Cathedral at, which is obviously the final section. And they showed us a screenshot of Scarlet Monastery, so unless we're going to get something later on that we haven't seen at all, it would make sense, wouldn't it, that we're talking about the level 41 being SM.
Yeah. I think unless they do Scarlet Monastery, I think the level 40 cap is probably the best time to introduce 2 new raids. That could be Sulfurak, and it could be our favorite, Uldaman.
Oh, well, there'll be many people, I'm sure, regardless of whether or not it's a level up raid, there'll be many people trying to confirm to their guildmates and friends and enemies alike that they are true older men. But we'll get we'll get into that another time. So let's move on from the level brackets then, because I think that we've discussed that enough. Let's talk briefly about the PvP, because I was interested with what they did here. Now, PvP is an area that I've not explored that much in our Classic playthrough, and the reason is that I find the instanced PvP of Classic, Vanilla Classic, to be quite difficult to get into, due to the whole queuing stuff and needing to be in the cities or need to be at the entrances to the battlegrounds. It's a little bit finicky in ways that later PvP looking for group systems weren't. And if there's one area where I think the looking for group system worked for me as an individual, and I know many people may disagree, it's when it came to PvP. Being able to just join the group finder and then get on with what I was doing, rather than having to be sat in one specific place waiting for the queue to pop. So what they've done for this level 25 cap is they've placed a focus on world PvP, and I think they've been quite clever here because they've made it that there is going to be a zone-wide event based in Ashenvale, which is obviously a place where the Horde and Alliance are going to meet, especially because of this Blackfathom Deeps raid, which is going to take place in Ashenvale.
Mm-hmm.
What are your immediate thoughts as somebody who's spent a lot more time PvPing than I have over the years?
To me, I think that the way that vanilla WoW was different was because of the world PvP.
Right.
Like over the course of every expansion, you'd see less and less of it. So I think just by maintaining the spirit of what this original version of the game is about, as well as introducing new content to us, I think this is probably the best route.
I think as well, part of that world PvP is centered around things like raid instances and getting to the raids. If you think about like Blackrock Mountain, for example, all the battles that took place during the early phase of phases 1 and 2 of Classic, you've got guilds travelling from Alliance territories, travelling from Morgan's Vigil. You've got Horde guilds travelling from the Badlands, from Kargath, meeting at the centre points in the canyons, in the passes, these massive encounters, all the iron grenades getting chucked everywhere, all this robotic chicken nonsense, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And at level 25, Ashenvale is one of those best places for this, I think, because there's so many places to hide, and there's so many places to ambush from. We're not talking like Tanaris, where Tanaris is like a bloodbath, but it's a bloodbath where everyone can see each other. Ashenvale, you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. And I think that will be great. I think it will be really interesting how they do that. What do you think that there will be in terms of the rewards for this? So just so that I've clarified it, the system, the way it works is, to my understanding, and I've looked into this part the least, so apologies if I get anything wrong, but my understanding is that if you kill sufficient enemy players in Ashenvale, essentially a boss will spawn. Similar, it would seem, to like Alterac Valley style, old AV style. A boss will spawn. It's either going to be a Priestess of the Moon for the Alliance or a Farseer for the Horde, and then the goal becomes kill that enemy boss. What are we going to be looking at in terms of rewards?
I think because of the level bracket alone, that it's probably going to be gear that's useful in for both types of content, both PvP and PvE. I guess that with the items from the raid, there's not going to be much there's not going to be much difference. I think most people are going to be running around in what we would call PvE gear and still doing PvP and stuff and feeling strong in that. So I suppose that's what you're going to get. I'm hoping, because there is a flavor to vanilla that doesn't really exist later on in the game, where items that you acquire early on your journey can be very useful and strong for a very long period of time.
Oh, yes.
I don't think all of the items should be like that, but I'm hoping that there are a couple of flavorful items, maybe weapons or something for some class, trinkets, whatever, that people are still going to be wearing at the point when they step into the first raid or raids, whatever we get when we are about to hit level 40.
Absolutely. And speaking of the raids, let's go into that next, and let's talk. We've already touched on it, but let's talk this 10-man Blackfathom Deeps raid. So, just to go over what we're actually getting. So, a 10-player raid version of Blackfathom Deeps, obviously a vanilla 5-man dungeon around the level 25 bracket, takes place in the Zoram Strand, right on the coast of Ashenvale in the west, where it borders with Darkshore. In the raid, there are going to be 7 bosses, and they've made it clear that the intention is to make twists on the old themes. Twists on the themes, additions to them. But they've been very clear that they want to try and make it distinct from the 5-man. You don't want to feel like you're just making a souped up, slightly harder, more trash, more damage to be dealt, more healing, all this sort of stuff, version of the 5-man. So what do you think about the idea going into it, and why do you think they went with Blackfathom Deeps?
Well, first of all, it's a pretty iconic dungeon, especially when you're leveling as Alliance. There's not many options in this level bracket alone. It has to do with the zone as well. Not only because this is a place where you would see while leveling up on Era, for example, you would meet other players from the other faction and you'd fight them. But there's also I believe if I got all of my Ashenvale memories correctly, there is in terms of questing and lore, there is a presence from the Horde and the Alliance in the zone.
Yeah.
So I think that probably has a lot to do with that in terms of the choice. And then in terms of the dungeon, well, I'm interested to see what they do in terms of mechanics for the bosses. Yeah. I think that players today are so much more experienced and have so much more knowledge about the game if you compare with how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
So there's room to add challenge to these fights. And there are a couple of things you can do with the first boss, Gamu Ra, the turtle. Yeah. I think that one had spinning shells and stuff, mechanics and whatnot in the original dungeon. I might be wrong. I might be thinking about a different fight or whatever.
I think you did. Yeah, I think I do remember that. I think that there's going to be. I mean, for me with BFD, I think that it all comes down to the zone, doesn't it? They picked Blackfathom Deeps as the dungeon of choice because they knew it was a dungeon that was in a contested area where Horde and Alliance players were going to interact. So they could put their zone-wide PvP event there, and they could have all of these level 25 players actually interacting with each other and maximise that kind of the friction, maximise the tension, and the cooperation as well. That sort of thing, which I think is very good. I love the idea that maybe, a battle starts in Ashenvale, two forces fight, maybe Horde fights off the Alliance, you find yourself in a group with, 6 or 7 other players, and after you've fought the Alliance off, you guys have been talking, you've been playing for an hour or so, and you say, hey guys, why don't we run BFD? And they say, yeah, we'll get a couple more players, I know some guys from my guild, bang, memories made, friendships made, you go and clear the dungeon. I want to see that because that's immersive and organically generated content that makes MMOs so good. I think that the issue I'll have is it's going to be jarring if BFD feels like a modern or even a Wrath or Cataclysm era dungeon or raid, and then you go back to, say, doing Dead Mines or Wailing Caverns. I know Wailing Caverns is a little lower level, but you know what I mean. And they feel super, super simplistic in comparison. They've got to get the balance right between making these fights, these new encounters, feel compelling and interesting, but also not too involved so that they feel way, way different than the rest of the vanilla game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, people who play this version of WoW I don't think that I might be wrong, but I don't think they're interested in having Mists of Pandaria or... No,
they are definitely not.
Just retail levels of challenge in raids.
No.
When I say that there's room to add challenge to these fights, is because there needs to be a certain level of difficulty without going completely ham.
Absolutely. The thing with vanilla players, and I don't want to speak for the whole community certainly, but the thing with vanilla players is what they value is immersion and the slow fulfillment of progressing their character. They want to feel like they get to level 60 and it's right, okay, now I have to take my time and I have to do Scholarmance, I have to do Stratholme, I have to do Dire Maul, I have to get my pre-raid best in slot and make sure I've got all of that stuff. Then I'm going to get into a group that's doing Molten Core or a guild doing that, and I'll progress from there to BWL, and I'll do the 20-man dungeons, and I'll try and get into AQ. It's not about individual bits of the content being super challenging in the sense of needing to have great reaction time with your buttons or anything like that. It's about putting the time in and building your character. And I hope that Blizzard don't sacrifice that immersive content design and that world building and that slow feeling of fulfillment, that slow burn that makes vanilla so potent as an older style MMO for the flashy excitement that you get with modern WoW, because they are two different things exactly. The final thing I want to say about this BFD thing is that I completely appreciate Blizzard doing it because it interacts well with Ashenvale and the zone-wide PvP thing. But can we take a moment, just, pay our respects to the greatest dungeon outside of level 60, Shadowfang Keep. I just feel so sad that they didn't take this opportunity to make a Shadowfang Keep raid, because that dungeon, it's the best dungeon you do until level 50. I'm just saying it. It's amazing. The design is amazing. Everything about it's great. Could you share my pain?
Yeah, I do. When I was starting out playing back in the day, that I believe that was probably the dungeon I ran most times on my long way that it took to reach level 60. I think it took me over a year, you know.
I just think that if one of the joys of old school WoW is the visuals and the themes of the different places and how rich they feel, Shadowfang Keep is one of those dungeons that's just a feast for the eyes. Like every room you go in, whether it's the banquet hall, whether it's Aragorn's tower, whether it's the courtyard outside, or the chef's kitchen, it all feels fantastic. I really wish they'd done that. I wish they'd done maybe two of the old 10-man raids and 2 zone-wide things, but maybe that's a bit too much to ask for. We split people up. I won't talk anymore about SFK because we're not getting it outside of it being obviously a 5-man dungeon as it is in vanilla.
Yeah, I guess.
But on the plus side, at least, we're getting locked at level 25 for a little bit. There'll be people who are doing that, either to gear up for the 10-man or just as side content. So there's that. Yeah. Moving on from the 10-man raid then, Tim, let's talk about the biggest. I've saved the biggest and the most interesting thing of Season of Discovery, the most interesting feature for last, and that is the class augmentations, the class additions, the class changes.
Yeah.
So this is definitely the biggest change. I think it's fair to say that. And it's also the most controversial one. When I put out my video reacting to the Season of Discovery announcement, easily the most controversy and the most division within the comment section was on the topic of the class augmentations. Before we discuss it in any detail, tell me your initial thoughts going into this. What do you think about these changes?
Oh, cue the drum roll. The first thing that I thought about when I saw this was Asterite armor from BFA and the legendaries from Legion is what it reminded me about.
Borrowed power.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's the first thing I thought. I haven't looked too deep into other classes apart from my class, Hunter. But like, it's just a way that they work, like that you put them into different slots of your gear. I haven't really managed to figure out if these are they're augmentations, so I don't believe that they are gear pieces in the same way.
Yeah.
You put them on your gear.
It's basically an enchant.
Yeah. While looking at the runes that were available in the demo, just for hunters, I noticed that a few of these, most, are actually abilities that were given to hunters later on in the game.
Yes.
So you have Lone Wolf, for example, which is for the chest slot, where you deal 25% increased damage with all attacks while you do not have an active pet. And I believe this was a talent first introduced in Warlords of Draenor, maybe earlier. I believe the kill command one is, I think that's the version of Wrath of Lich King kill command. Again, I'm not 100% sure about this, but this is just that I discovered. Sniper training, obviously, is something that was also introduced to hunters later on.
Explosive shot, yeah.
Explosive shot is there. Chimera shot as well, and these were introduced later on. I believe the Chimera Shot one especially is exactly the version that I'm using, that you use as a marksmanship hunter in Wrath of Lich King currently.
Yeah.
So, without being too harsh, these augmentations, these abilities, they are not exactly new. They're borrowing things from later versions of the game. And seeing as how this was the case for many of the hunter runes, I'm sure this is probably the case for other classes as well.
To an extent, you're right. There are some exceptions. For example, obviously, we're going to discuss it in a moment, but things like Shaman tanks, mage healers. Obviously, with the Warlock, you get Metamorphosis, which was a thing. But with some of them, there are some additions. But for the most part, you're right. These are abilities that were brought in later on, in later expansions, and they've kind of been retrofitted to vanilla. And it is a bit jarring in a way, and I think it's a bit jarring for a few reasons. On the one hand, some of these abilities that came in later were great additions, right? I think things like Explosive Shot, for example. When did that come in? Was it TBC or Wrath?
I'm using it in Wrath currently, but
I can't remember if it was in TBC.
I can't really remember if it was already there in TBC, but it's definitely there in Wrath.
Is that explosive shot's a cool ability. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
When I played Hunter, I thought the explosive shot was really cool. I really liked it. Stuff like that, I think's just awesome. Warriors are getting Devastate. Stuff like that, you know. There are abilities that are, at least for later stages of the game, were considered core elements of these classes that are now coming to vanilla. And my problem isn't necessarily the abilities themselves, it's just that if the idea was to go in a different direction, like you've got this 10-man raid, this zone-wide PvP event, that's completely new stuff that wasn't in the game. The idea of them bringing in abilities that were in the game just at a later phase doesn't feel necessarily as fitting. It kind of feels like they're trying to bring the game into a different era, which a lot of people are pushing back about. And I think that that's justified. You know, the question is, are these changes exciting and radical? Yeah, of course they are. But they could be too far too fast as well, right? Yeah,
I don't think this isn't necessarily the right choice. Yeah. The thing is just that, like, obviously, as there has been with every version of WoW that has ever existed, there's going to be some way or another to min-max the role that you're playing. There is going to be a select combination of runes for hunters, which is going to give you the biggest damage output. But hopefully this means that you are no longer stuck with just using your auto shot for most of the time. There's going to be the things that changes up the rotations for all the DPS specs. And for the classes that are getting completely new roles that has never previously existed, except for very, very niche, personally building ways of having a shaman tank is probably some sort of happy accident that has happened in the past. Like, same goes for warlocks, I think. And I mean, paladins are getting a taunt finally.
Exactly. I mean, I think for me, there's a big positive and there's a big negative. The negative is that it's going to make classes not feel like vanilla WoW. And I don't think there's any getting away from that. That's what's going to happen, and a lot of people aren't going to be happy with that. But at the same time, one of the things that made vanilla so interesting when it was current was that no one really knew what they were dealing with in terms of the toolkit they had available. And the people that really shone, people like Swifty, for example, or Grim, the rogue, what made them shy was their ability to find ways to use the toolkit that they had in new and interesting ways that people hadn't seen before. And I think that that's kind of a good thing with this. People are going to be playing versions of classes that haven't really existed in that form. Yeah, you're a hunter with explosive shot, but it's not tied to a talent in a certain tree or anything like that now. So what are you combining it with? And you can only have so many runes on each character, so there's got to be different combinations that work depending on what you're doing. And I think stuff like that is a really good positive. We'll have to wait and see how it works out in the long run, really.
Yeah, like you're saying, like back in the day, there was a lot more room for experimentation and creativity.
Exactly.
I think there's going to be a lot of room for that now as well with this. There's definitely going to be the case where, like I said, some builds are going to be better than others. They are going to be tried out, practiced, and then mastered.
I don't expect Lone Wolf Hunter to last very long, I must say.
I don't think so either. No. I think there's always a benefit of having a pet. Yeah. They are making they are turning Growl into like an actual taunt ability.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it is sort of a taunt, like it builds out, it gives your pet aggro. Yeah. But I was hoping that this would give room for maybe a hunter tank, not because I would necessarily play it, but I think for other hunters who want to try it out, that would have been really cool. This doesn't seem to be the case right now, but I don't know, maybe there is a way for really creative people to finding a way of maybe having like a hunter off tank that uses a strong tenacity style pet, like a bear or whatever, to make it work somehow. We'll see. We don't know enough about it yet because we're not there.
Exactly.
It's insane that we're going to be there in like 3 weeks' time. But
that's it. And we don't know where the limit is on this. I think for me, man, what I would say about the whole class changes for vanilla for Season of Discovery is that people give the devs a bit of a bad rap for including all these abilities from later on in the game, like TBC and Wrath. But for them to have made new abilities for every single class, it would have just been ridiculous to get that done and then balance it. Do you know what I mean? Like, to add completely original abilities that weren't also just clones or derivative versions of abilities they created later on in the game. I can understand the rationale of including these other abilities from Wrath and onwards, but I also understand why players aren't happy with it. I think that they had a choice, didn't they? Either have no class development with Classic Plus and just have keep the core stuff that they're putting in, the PvP and the PvE stuff, but they wanted to mix things up even more, and I can appreciate that, and I can praise them for that.
Yeah.
I think that the key thing is that they've said that they are open to change, and certain things, like you were saying just then, may not work out in the long run. They might just keep them in. There might be other things that they put in instead. They might tune and tweak things, remove things, add things. I think we've got to remember that this is an open-ended project. This is the first time with Classic where we have no real idea where it ends and where it goes to. The only thing that I think I have a real problem with, and maybe it's just me and my idea of how classes and characters should work in MMOs, I hate any kind of borrowed power. I like that you get stats from gear when you acquire that gear through dungeons and raids and PvP. That's cool. But I hate anything that's directly tied to the way that your character's built that comes from gear, other than tier sets. With tier sets it's fine because, the idea is that you're acquiring a set that just enhances what you already have. But with these abilities, the idea that you're only getting access to an ability because you've enchanted a piece of gear with it, well, it doesn't feel like it's tied to my character then. It feels like it's tied to a piece of gear or to an enchant. Yeah. Is that fair, or am I being a bit too picky?
No, I think it's fair.
Yeah, like, why couldn't these just be talents? Why couldn't they just be talent choices? You know what I mean? I don't understand. I know that they've fucked up talents to an extent because, like, how can you make talents work if you suddenly got all these extra options? It's going to mess with the balancing. I get that. But surely there was a way that they could have done it rather than just,
Yeah, that would turn into more of like an artifact weapon thing, if you remember those from Legion.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way. I think with all of this, like, just touching upon the rune system and everything, like, what you were saying, that like people may be giving them criticism for introducing things that were added later on in the game, but at the same time, like, this is Classic Plus, like, let's call it for what it is. Yeah. You can't have that and at the same time have no changes.
Exactly, yeah.
This is changes, like, there has to be changes.
If I've learned anything from the video that I made on class design, like, that was my idea of a good version of Classic Plus, and I get that, I'm not a game developer, I'm no more experienced or qualified or creative than anyone else. But it did tell me one thing, and that's that if you ask 100 people what their perfect Classic Plus would be, you would get 100 different answers, and some of those answers would be completely opposite each other. So I think that Blizzard had to take a stand somewhere if they were going to ever do it. They had to do content that they thought was going to work, and we have to trust... Well, we don't have to trust them, but we have to, just watch and observe and try and have an objective view, don't we, and see... Does it work or does it not? And if it doesn't work, we can, lambast them for that later down the line. And if it does work, we should praise them for it. But ultimately, they could never make a perfect game because there'd always be people saying, oh, they should have never had this, or they should have had more of this, and all of that stuff.
Vanilla WoW is not perfect, but whatever is imperfect is not necessarily bad,
Wow, dude, the deep philosophy.
Whoa.
Blowing my mind.
It's like I took it from the the back of a book or something.
I was gonna say, I love it.
Yeah, but okay, now I'm losing my my topic here as well.
He's blown his own mind with the Swedish IKEA philosophy, dude.
Yeah, definitely. No, but I think we need to take a leap of faith with them. I think with, like, again, I'm coming back to the name Season of Discovery. Yeah. Like, they are definitely taking a few chances here to see what works.
Yeah.
And if it is successful, they will continue. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they will.
But I am really happy that they are basing, like they said they would, basing a lot of things. Well, they're open for using stuff that was previously supposed to be added into the game back in the day, but never was.
Yeah.
Unexplored territories and whatnot.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Like the open spaces that you can't go to on the maps of Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms.
Absolutely, yeah. We're talking north of Stratholme, stuff like that. the bit that's between Red Ridge Mountains and Swamp of Sorrows, that little extra area.
I wouldn't be surprised if that all the way up to level 60, it's going to be new iterations of things that we recognize, like that has been changed and has been, well, it's going to be new content with using an old foreground, if you may.
Yeah.
And then when we reach that final level cap of 60, that's when we're going to see the stuff that we never saw before.
And that's what I'm interested to see. Yeah, we might see new raids and stuff like that, and that's super interesting. But are we going to see stuff like a new version of Naxx? Are we going to see, do you know what I mean, like changes to these iconic raids? They're changing Blackfathom Deeps, aren't they? They're making it a 10-man raid, so when they get to level 60, who knows?
Could we go to the old version of Hellfire Peninsula?
Could we go to Hyjal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's loads of options, and it also...
Yeah.
I'll leave you with this before we'll wrap up the class bit, because there's a couple of questions about class that I think are important, but I've got to ask, does this leave the door open for a different timeline for WoW? Because obviously if we get additional new content at 60, where do we go? What doors does that open that weren't open because we went down the TBC route?
Yeah, I think this game, like Season of Discovery, is what's going to build the, like, if anything, if we're going to have a new timeline for WoW, that would be WoW 2, you know.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing we will ever get to WoW 2 is a completely new timeline where we, again, will probably go to a few places in the lore that we've already seen the retail version of the game over the years, but with new and different experiences than last time we were there. Like I said, like could we go to the original version of Hellfire Peninsula, or would Outland change in a way if we would go there? I think they're building a structure for that. I think there are endless possibilities with this if it is successful, which I personally really hope it is.
So do I, for various reasons. And who knows, we could end up in a position in a few years from now where instead of having all these different versions of the game, you've just got retail WoW and you've got old school WoW, which is not the same as classic. It's not a reproduction. It's not a remaster. It's a different game in a different style of MMO from 2004 through to 2006, that kind of era, compared to the modern, 2020s MMO. So, going back to the classes then, because we could talk about this for hours. We could talk about it for hours. But going back to the classes then, tell me what you think about the expanded roles, because I think that of all the class augmentations, that's the juiciest stuff, isn't it? If it was just that, different classes were getting explosive shot here or shadow step there or whatever it was, that would be one thing. But we are talking chronomancers, mage healers, we're talking metamorphosis tank warlocks, we're talking weird tank rogues, and we're talking rockbiter style tank shamans. What are your thoughts about that?
Obviously, me playing a hunter, I'm going to be playing DPS. That's what we're getting, but that's also what I would prefer to play, so I'm not unhappy about that or anything. I think that I'm very happy for the people who, that play warlocks, maybe exclusively, rogues, shamans, and have always wanted to have a fourth spec, if you may. I
know as a rogue player, I've always played vanilla WoW and thought, what if my rogue could tank? Said no one ever. What a strange idea, right? The idea.
Yeah, it's strange, but also, I'm very curious to see how it works.
So am I, and I think that that's adding into what we were saying before about the idea of returning to the vanilla freshness, the original vanilla freshness, where people didn't know what they could do and what to expect, Remember the story of the paladin who stacked Reckoning and basically killed Doomlord Kazakh? Stuff like that. People didn't know what their classes could do until someone proved it, and this is what we're going to get, I think, with these roles. So, very interesting, very exciting. I know what you're playing already, so other than the class you're playing, which you've kind of made very clear at this point, what do you think you're most excited for coming to the game? What class role sort of thing?
Hunter. No, I'm really excited to see Warlock tanks.
Yeah.
Like if I would make any alt in the game, it would probably be a Warlock. When Classic released in 2019 or 2020, whatever it was, I actually did make a Warlock and not a Hunter,
Wow.
just to give myself. Yeah. I think I think I leveled to 40 and then quit for some reason, but I was playing all by myself, so.
Yeah.
I guess that was my reasoning for that. But like, if I would play an alt, I would play a Warlock, and like, I don't dabble much in like tanking or healing, otherwise. But I'm pretty curious to just see how the Warlock tank could work out. I just think the idea of, tapping into all of these demonic powers to like imbue yourself with all that fel magic, transforming into a demon yourself. And like I mentioned this earlier to you, but like to me the idea of a tank is always that you want to try to match your strength and resilience with that of a raid boss. That's why you're the tank. And with all that, just tapping into lore and fantasy here of the class, turning into a really powerful fucking demon, what else would you be other than a tank?
Absolutely, and I completely agree. Like, I can picture it in my mind, like almost like some sort of fan art painting or fan animation. Doomlord Kazakh marches, he stomps out of the smoke. Earthquakes as he stomps along through the blasted lands. And what rises up to meet him? Another demon, a black and purple, like shadow-wreathed metamorphosis warlock. Demon versus demon, locked in this physical, visceral combat. It is really cool from a class fantasy perspective. And I agree with you. The warlock for me, like, it just sounds so cool. I do hope that it doesn't just play like a feral druid, like a bear druid.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a transformation tank, isn't it? I hope it doesn't just play like that. I'm sure that it won't, because the Warlock is fundamentally a caster, but we'll have to see. So, the final question then on the classes. Well, tell me what class you're playing, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking, as if it wasn't already obvious for you.
Can you guess which class I'm playing?
Let me check. So let me get this right. So you've been playing a hunter for how long? 18 years, yeah?
Something like that.
You made one alt, and you thought, and it's a surprise to you that you made one alt whilst playing Classic that was a Warlock, and didn't even get him to max. And other than that, you played a Hunter, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be a big surprise if I said that I think that you're playing a Hunter for Season of Discovery?
No, I don't think. I don't think that's much of a surprise. I am 100% devoted to playing Hunter. I've played Hunter in every expansion, every version of the game, except for that one time when I decided to level a Warlock from scratch before making a Hunter. But
so let me just get this straight. You are actively playing a Hunter in Vanilla, raiding a Hunter in Wrath,
yep,
and also a raiding Hunter in Retail, all simultaneously.
Yes.
Okay, so you're the Hunter man then. You're going to play a Hunter. You're going to play an Orc Hunter?
Well, if we decide to go Horde...
Well, here it is. This is it.
Definitely going Orc Hunter.
I think this time around we're going to have to play Horde. And it's a shame, because I'm actually really into the idea of playing a Paladin. But I think, we played Alliance for our Classic playthrough, but it never felt right, did it? It never really felt that right. It felt a little bit strange.
I did get quite attached to this dwarf, actually, and really enjoyed playing one as well. But
and the Alliance stuff, like Duskwood and things like that. Oh, yes.
Yeah, for sure. But Orc Hunter is my thing.
Yeah, and that brings me on to what I'm playing, because as it stands, I'm undecided. I'm really tempted to... I'm going to play a tank. I've decided I'm going to play something that can tank. I've not decided yet whether I want to play a meta Warlock or whether I want to play a tank Rogue. I always play Rogues, but I don't know if I find tank Rogue that interesting an idea. I'm not sure. And like the Metamorphosis Warlock, it's just so cool. Like earlier today, I found myself listening to Call of Cthulhu by Metallica and picturing like running around Ashenvale, like stomping people. as a demon. And I thought, oh, this is a pretty cool idea, man. It's pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure you're playing undead.
Oh yeah, I'm playing undead for sure.
Yeah.
I've got to keep it real, I've got to keep it looking like the IRL me. So I've got to be an undead. It's just it's gonna come down to an undead rogue or warlock. I can see it. I'm clearly such a well-adjusted, optimistic, lawful, good, aligned person that I'm either going to play an undead rogue or warlock. But hey, what can I say? It is what it is.
Yeah.
But hey, going forward then, to wrap up, I think that the way I'd conclude this is they made a big deal at the presentation about taking on community feedback and the ability, well, their features to change as the season goes forward. And like you said yourself, very wisely, this is a season, and how much weight you place on that word depends from person to person. Some people hate the fact that they're calling it a season because it implies impermanence, that the character's going to be reset at some point down the line. Others like it because it implies that there's going to be changes and that mistakes that may be made can be washed away. Whatever happens, whether it's permanent, whether it becomes permanent, whether certain things are stripped back, whether there's a full reset one day, everything can be changed, which is good. Is this what you would have wanted for Classic Plus, more or less, or what?
Well, wishful thinking, I would have hoped that it was, it felt like, because I can get with, people feeling that just because it's called a season, that it means that it's going to end.
Yeah.
Like the Season of Mastery did. And that was, I guess, not very popular from the beginning as well. Like, if I got to choose myself, it would have been called something else.
Yeah, sure. The name is lame.
Yeah, like they would have just, right out the bat going like, this is Classic Plus. This is whatever they decided to call it. This is the closest thing we're ever going to see to WoW 2.
Yeah. And
implying that this is a new way of playing as close as possible the original version of the game with the original spirit and intentions, with an ever-expanding universe and possibilities going forward that was going to have its own separate updates and expansions and whatnot. But now we've got this. I'm very curious, very optimistic, even if carefully so, because this is, after all, essentially a new game. It's a new version of WoW that we haven't seen before. Well, we've seen a few things before, but not everything, obviously. So yeah,
that's what we've got. Who knows? I think is the real point to be made, and that's both the sort of slightly concerning thing, but also the exciting thing. None of us know what to expect. None of us know if this is going to be a complete flop, or if it's going to be the next big thing, the renaissance of WoW. Who knows? But what I do know is that we will be there every step of the way with this, and I'm so glad that we're here to see this from the very beginning. Missed out on the beginning for Classic itself in 2019, but we're here now for Season of Discovery. And with exciting times ahead, not just in the game, but also in the channel, because I think for Season of Discovery, we're going to be having our own guild, aren't we? We're going to create a guild.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Season of Discovery, there's going to be a lot of new content to discover. And there's going to be stuff like the 10-man raid, and the best way to experience that is with a guild of friends and heroes, true chads of the community, no doubt. So we'll be creating some sort of guild. I have no idea what it would be called, but I think that'll be really fun, and I think it'll just make it even more enjoyable for us and for all of you guys out there. So if you're interested in the idea of a community guild, let me know. If no one's that bothered, then I won't do it. But if people are interested, we'll get that set up as soon as the servers go live and we know what servers we're going to be on. But until then, my friends, I want to thank all of you for watching this, and I want to thank you, Tim, for coming along and giving me your thoughts and sharing it with me and discussing Season of Discovery. Exciting times
Always
ahead,
a pleasure.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, until the next time, everyone, thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!
Bye-bye.